Hi guys. Welcome to another episode of Life Unfinished.
I'm Toya.
I'm RJ. I was gonna say it again. I'm Toya.
Ruth Curly wants to be me, guys. So before we start, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being with us today. We have a pretty interesting topic to go over, actually.
So this is car conversations,
Yes.
as I like to call them.
It's called It's a Rainy Day. So.
Yeah. So we're just here talking in the car, but we're talking about like marriage in the context of having kids before you're married, and more in the sense of discussing that with your partner before you guys take that step into marriage. And so Toya was saying, we were just both talking about the fact that we have seen situations where couples go into marriage or one of them wants children and the other one doesn't, and then that eventually leads to divorce because they can't reconcile their differences. And so we were just kind of talking about how we felt about that and how sad that is to see,
Sorry, guys,
because it's not like you stop loving the person. It's just that you have this one difference that you can't get over. And I can't imagine how hard that would be for both people to know that you want to be with this person, but they're not willing to let something go and you're not willing to let something go. Both of you are unwilling to sacrifice, and that costs you your marriage. And I can't imagine that. That must be so hard.
Yeah, it's a reality I can't quite connect to. And maybe just because I value marriage so much. I can't understand, though, like, wanting to throw in the towel. We've all been there.
Yeah.
But the following through and the actually deciding together, like, no, if we can't have kids, we're not going to be together, is crazy to me. Not crazy, like, oh, they're wrong. It's just, I don't really quite understand it. Like, I guess because I've never been in that situation. But I know for Samuel and I, so I'm currently pregnant, as some of you guys might know, and you might also know that I got pregnant, I think it was 7 months into marriage. Like, our anniversary's in a couple weeks, sorry. And what I mean, that was so far, so far from what we thought life would be like. It's not like we're surprised we're there today, not like in that sense, but like that wasn't what we necessarily like thought. Like, I don't want to explain it. We weren't disappointed about that, but it's like, I know for me it was a lot easier to accept when we felt that we were supposed to start having kids early than Sam. So it wasn't like, oh, I was convincing Sam or he convincing me. It's just like we both just kind of got to a place where we were like, we really felt like we were supposed to start having our kids earlier than later. Not now, but earlier than later. We knew that much. So that was a hard reality for both of us, but it was definitely an interesting conversation. I should mention that we did have this conversation before marriage as well. Like, what if we were to get pregnant right away? It happens, you know? How would we get through that? How would both people feel? Because sometimes you're shocked in the moment. Like, you don't even know the person would react that way.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I did not think this was such a big deal for you. But anyways, that was quite an interesting milestone. I don't know what to call it. It was just a challenge to get through, to discuss, to kind of realize, oh man, life is gonna change a lot, you know. And it was only at that point that I realized how much something like that can affect your marriage. So it didn't, in our sense, it didn't like do anything wrong for us, but I saw the weight of it, and I saw the weight of like how much we had to start considering and thinking and put off. And I was like, man, now I get why this can be like a trigger for divorce.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, for me and Samuel, it was a little different because we both passionately wanted kids, and we're both kind of people where we're always ready to jump into whatever God wants. So it wasn't like we can, as much as even if we don't want it, we can accept that this is what God wants, and we can passionately do it. Whereas in a case where you didn't even want a child, I can imagine that being very, very, very challenging for the relationship.
Especially for the woman, because she's the one carrying the child.
Yes. And then with all the sickness.
Yeah. Like, it's not like she can be like, okay, well, you go have a child of your own, you know, and I'll just help you. You can't. In a marriage, bringing a child into the world or even into your home is a decision you have to make together. That's not a decision that one person can
make.
It
needs to be a very clear conversation.
Yeah, you
not
have
a
to be
vague
standing
conversation.
You have to be standing together, or you will tear each other apart. You'll bring down your household if you're standing on both sides fighting against each other. And it's also just not the environment that you want to bring a child into.
I was just thinking
well.
that. Yeah,
So
you don't want the child to feel like a burden.
Nobody wins in that situation.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it is so important that you and your husband are on the same page. I know for us, we decided that we wanted to have children a little bit later on in our marriage. We wanted to make sure that we had some time just for us to establish a good foundation, especially because my husband's job with his work, it fluctuates a lot. And so for him, it was really important that he take the time to be able to establish himself in his career. And also for me, so that I kind of know what that looks like. When your husband's a musician or an artist, where they're doing some kind of work that fluctuates or changes a lot or takes on different faces, it is very important that you have an understanding of what their work looks like, because you don't want them to be chasing off their dreams and you feel like you're left behind or stuck at home with the kids, especially if you have children. So it is important to have that understanding. And for me, there was a time period where I thought I might be pregnant, and I was like losing my mind. I was so scared. I was like, no, this is before Ty. I am not ready. And I genuinely felt ready. I felt like I wasn't ready. It didn't have anything to do with the child itself, but I felt like mentally and emotionally I was not prepared to have a child. And I was also even more scared because I'm like, if I'm not ready, I don't want to, because I'm carrying a child, I don't want to be the one feeling that way, because I don't want to pass on those feelings to them, or they feel like unwanted or anything like that. So I had all these things going through my mind. Thankfully, at this point in time, I wasn't pregnant. But for me as well, that made me realize, like, okay, one, when you are married, I think to some degree you should be ready to have a child, even if it's not necessarily when you want to, because it is a possibility. So that was something that we had to talk about and discuss. Okay, what if we did get a child earlier than expected?
That's important.
Yeah, we had to be prepared for it, because if I get pregnant tomorrow, I can't say, oh, well, I'm not. At this point, it doesn't make sense to say I'm not ready. I knew it was always possible. And so that was something then we had to have a conversation about and say, okay, well, what do we want to have put in place? And let's make sure that we have those things ready almost at all times. And then if we get a child before that, at least we're ready. If not, we're still ready, no matter what. But I understand what kind of that feels like, to maybe get something you're not prepared for. And in some people's cases, it's something that they didn't want in general. A child is, it's something they don't want,
not even
period.
about timing.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with timing or anything like that. And so it's hard. Having this kind of discussion is 100% something you have to do or should do before you're married. But if you have never had that discussion and you just figured things would work out, it's still never too late to have that discussion with your spouse. And if you're at a point where maybe you guys disagree on something, then you have to both be willing to work it out and to come to a solution that works for both of you guys, not where one person is compromising, because it's easy to then resent the other person and feel like I'm doing this for them, or if they weren't here I would never have to do this, or whatever. So coming to a solution that works for both people and makes both people happy, and that's not easy to do. It's not easy, especially when it requires sacrifice on both people's parts.
And sometimes it's how do I say it, sacrificing what you want, giving into the other person's desire because you realize they're right. So it's not always going to be like you 100% both feel great and everyone wins. Sometimes it is like, okay, I don't want to do this, but my spouse is right, or this timing does make more sense, you know. And for me too, like, part of what had to make us kind of give and take a bit too is a lot of health concerns played into it, which those are things you don't think about before you're married. Everybody just assumes, I can get pregnant, what's a big deal, you know? So those are things to consider as well, because sometimes you might be like, okay, I don't physically want this, like, in terms of like my life, but what's your body saying? Is it time in terms of that? There's just so many, it's like, for example, if someone's getting married at an older age, that doesn't matter. You can have kids, but sometimes there's a little bit less of a chance. So these are just different things that you want to discuss and not wait until the moment or wait until like things are like you have to make a decision quickly.
Yeah.
Because I find it's a harder conversation to have and emotions are involved, and you don't get to see the true person's feelings because they're so emotional, they're so shocked by the circumstance. Like, for example, when Ruth thought she was pregnant unexpectedly, like, it's harder to reason at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, because you're just like,
you're
oh my
blinded by
gosh.
emotion,
Yeah.
whether it's good or bad. It is like it takes over.
Yeah,
in
there's
that
definitely a
time period.
bias for sure there. So talking about children in advance is important.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, it might be a vague conversation, like, yeah, I like kids, you like kids, okay. But you don't realize the person was thinking to have kids right away. Or not for the next 5 years, and you were, like, that was just...
Or that they like other people's kids, but they don't want their own.
Yeah. Or they might have been thinking about adoption.
Yeah.
Like, these are things that you have to discuss, because it can really cause a shift, a big, big, big shift in your marriage. Another fun topic that I'd love to hear your opinions on too is, do your children come before your spouse?
Very good question. And what we mean by that,
like an easy answer, but is it?
what we mean by that is your husband or wife's, are they a priority before your children? That does not mean that your children are not a priority, but it just means,
What's the order?
Yeah, exactly. What's the order of sequence, for lack of better words?
Yeah, and why we say this is because a big reason, I should say, for a lot of people why they don't want to have kids for a long time is not even because of not feeling ready for kids, but they have that fear their kids are going to consume and take over their life and replace them, like in their spouse's life. And I'm sure we've all seen it, where somebody is passionately in love, and then the child comes, and it's like their spouse doesn't even exist anymore. Like, and sometimes for both people, they've actually made that choice that our kids are our life, and they don't go on dates anymore. They don't, like, everything becomes about their children.
They're no longer spouses, like married. They're just parents.
Yeah.
Their marriage has like dissolved into just parenthood, and their relationship almost doesn't exist except to take care of their children.
And in my opinion, I think that's a big problem. I think that your spouse comes before your children. Don't get me wrong. Ask Ruth. Okay, she'll tell you. I love children. And motherhood to me is a blessing beyond so many things. But I know my both of our associate pastors had to, with love, with lots of love, correct me, because I was one of those people who were like, my kids come first. Like, when they get here, everything is about them. And he had to really say, and what happens when they grow up and leave you? That's really what he said. Like, you do realize that, after a while they move on and they find spouses, you know,
and you don't come first at that point.
And that's okay. That's what they're supposed to do, right? Like, you're supposed to grow them so that they can move on, otherwise they can be with you forever, which a lot of parents seem to have a problem with that reality. Like, your kids are not here just to be with you. You're here so you can release them. Yeah. That's the point. So, and that was a hard reality for me. This was before I was married, by the way. So this was good to learn beforehand.
Especially if you get pregnant unexpectedly and you have children early, you don't want to put yourself in the situation where you didn't deal with it beforehand. So definitely have that conversation.
That can be tough, yeah. Or you don't want to be dealing with when the child's already there and you're already so in love with them and you already feel. So I guess you can call her like a second mom of mine said something to me. She said, when your baby's newborn, yes, they are first priority because they are freshly born and they are very needy, and you both are just kind of like dedicated to them. But she's like, but once they have hit a month or two and they're a little bit more, they can kind of go to different people and stuff, she's like, then it goes back to your spouse. Yes, you give all you can, but she's like, as they grow is when you make that transition. Yeah. Because a lot of people are trying to make that transition at 18 when their kids are 18, and it's hard. Your marriage has already been like,
you spent 18 years practicing not putting your spouse first, and then at the 18-year mark you want to change all of that. And we know that once you get a habit, it is hard to break it. Especially because your child...
It's 21 days, they say, to get into it. Never mind 18 years.
And what if your child comes back and they need something again? Then you drop your spouse because you're so used to putting your child first. So you're like, oh, well, now our child needs something again. Yeah. So you go back to putting your child first. And it's not healthy.
Yeah, and what is that? Also, like, when I think about what does that portray for your kids about marriage too? Because if you want your kids to go on and have a successful marriage and choose the right person for them, if through their whole life they've seen that you've put them before your spouse, then the cycle just repeats itself.
Yeah.
And they don't learn to value their spouse. And they start to think that, or you can cause a really toxic house environment where your kids are kind of turning you against each other because your kids realize that they're first.
Yeah.
So they can say whatever they want, whenever they want, and you yield to that. So that is, to me, dangerous, and something we need to think about as well. Is if you can't complain when your kids go off and, you know, find a bum, or, like, for lack of a better word, find someone that's not treating them well, when all they've ever seen is that kind of relationship that doesn't prioritize each other, doesn't go on dates, doesn't express love. Like, your kids need to know, I am in love with this person. This person is here to stay. You gotta love them the way you love me. Like, you know what I mean? It needs to be clear what romance is and what true marriage is, because they'll just repeat the cycle. They'll just copy whatever they've seen you do. And that's not good.
And there are some people who like genuinely believe that you only get married to have children.
Yeah.
And that, like, for some even Christians, that might be their mindset, because they know no sex before marriage, and that's all they've been preached. And so to them, marriage is a way to kids, or marriage is a way to sex, or whatever else. And it's so important that they see in their household and in their parents that their parents love each other, that marriage is not just about children, but that it's about loving this person, getting to know this person, having fun with this person, struggling through life with this person, finding solutions with this person, just everything that marriage is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So setting that example for your children. Setting that example for your children is so important. And it's not easy when maybe you didn't have that example, but it's never too late to learn.
No.
It's not an excuse.
There's always people around that can teach you.
Yeah, for sure.
I know when we came to Ottawa, we really learned what a good marriage looked like. We were like, oh, this is nice. Because we're around too much married people, and you really, like, we learn from them. You use the opportunity to learn from them. So what I would suggest, guys, is talk to your spouse about this.
Yeah.
Make a vow. Make a lot of vows at the altar. I think one of them should be, you shall come before my children. Because why I'm saying that is because it's easy to say, harder thing to do. So I know right when we found that I was pregnant, we were excited, really excited. We're still, like, anticipating her arrival, waiting to see her. But we sat down and we said, we are vowing. I think we actually recently said we're going to put it in writing, to not stop being madly in love when she's here, and to make sure she knows that that's our priority. And of course, so is she, absolutely. But we made a lot of rules, like, okay, we won't stop doing this, and we'll still have to do this. And sometimes you have to, like, keep yourself accountable, because it is, trust me, it's easy to say, but when your kid gets here and they're cute and they're chubby and they're needy, suddenly you forgot what you said, you know? So, and not even just say it to each other. Like, I know we shared this with Ruth and Clayton as well, and told them to keep us accountable. Like, we're not gonna be that parents that can't ever go anywhere. Sorry, we can't. Excuse me, we have our kid. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen. Obviously, that's going to happen. And there's no shame in that. But you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that person that people just stop inviting you because they realize that you're everything about you is considering your children.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that people do make that assumption because of how popular that is. So that's something, too, to be careful of, guys. Don't assume because people have kids that they can't come places. And I recently was talking to a couple who said and I've heard this before, that was a burden for them. Like, they actually wanted to go out. And they were always willing to pay for a babysitter, but people just stopped asking them, which doesn't happen with us, to do stuff, because people just assume that, oh, you got kids now, that's your priority. No, you still want to have fun. You still want to go on trips, and so we can be, mindful of that as well.
And I think also maybe sometimes that comes if you also take your child everywhere with you. Not that I highly doubt people have a problem with your child being there, but obviously if your child is there, you have to take care of them. You can't just bring them and then ignore them. So sometimes that takes you away from whatever is going on. And sometimes, maybe your friend wanted you to be there, or wanted you to be able to participate or something like that. And so maybe that's also part of the reason. You never know. And so, but yeah, I definitely think that, I don't think once you have a child, your life stops. So hopefully your friends don't assume the same and then not invite you. But
it does happen.
We definitely want to hear what you guys have to think. So again, join the conversation, jump in the comments, let us know, tag us. We'll talk to us on Instagram, do what you got to do, but jump in the conversation. Let us know what you guys think. Do you maybe have someone who has gone through this? Have you gone through this? What were your conversations like with your spouse, or have you had a conversation with your friends about this ever before?
Yeah, like what's your timeline for kids?
Yeah.
Good to know. And why is that your timeline? Yeah, let us know. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep supporting, guys. We really appreciate it.
Remember to follow us on Instagram at life.unfinished, at Toya and Kanza, and at RJ Connell Official.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you again.